Warning, I chain smoke and I say fuck a lot. But I accept myself for the way I am. I accept you too. Viewer discretion advised.
Historic and recent failings of government and private behavior, various social and economic inequities. These causes have all been examined and are pretty well understood today. But there is one other important cause of civil commotion in America that few people know very much about. Simply stated, it is this. No matter how bad the conditions are, trouble does not happen automatically. It must be agitated. That means the riots of the 60s came about because there were those who wanted them to come about, who did everything in their power to cause them.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
This video is sponsored by you, the viewer. I've had a sponsor before. I didn't like it, so I'm not sponsored, nor am I monetized anywhere. So anything I do make comes from you. So if you like what I do and you want to support the cause, you can shoot me a tip or support to my PayPal, Venmo, Cash App below. Or you can join my Patreon or check out my merch store. It's been a little while, but I guess I needed a little break. So I'm actually working on another video, and then I came across an old 1972 documentary called The Riot Makers, and I wanted to share it since all these riots are going on right now. And being that it's from over 50 years ago, I thought it would be interesting to see some similarities.
To cope with civil disorders, we must understand and act on all the causes, including the people who manipulate violence and destruction, the people we call the Riot Makers. A chemist knows that if he drops a block of sodium in water, it will explode. An engineer knows that if he buries dynamite in proper quantities and patterns and detonates it, he can dig an irrigation ditch. And a trained revolutionary knows that if he chooses proper slogans, gathers a crowd and sends agents in to agitate it, he can create a riot. The techniques of riot making are as simple, scientific, and systematic as that. Of course, street crowds and mobs and mass hysteria have been weapons of political warfare from time immemorial. But until the 20th century, riots and civil upheavals were usually spontaneous. True, professional troublemakers and agitators usually figured in the plot somewhere. But no one ever had begun to analyze their role in a scientific spirit, to collect the techniques of agitation, create a handbook, and train others in the art of disruption and revolution, until this man, Vladimir Lenin, the evil genius who became the chief architect, instigator, and beneficiary of the Russian Revolution. Lenin studied carefully every account of urban insurrection and other writings on the use of propaganda, mass manipulation. A major part of his early credo was that mass movements can and must be artificially promoted. His methods consisted of exploiting every trace of discontent, creating widespread illusions about the nature and strength of the movement, and then seizing power. By 1915, Lenin had so cultivated his techniques that he was able to estimate quite precisely how much organization and agitation was required to achieve a given result. In 1917, Lenin and his trained Bolshevik followers used their accumulated knowledge to harness virtually every Russian who had a gripe, and promising them true democracy and reform, rode them all to power. Lenin's methodology has been the guide ever since for those who have tried to overthrow the existing order. Today's riot maker is the end product of 175 years of cultural and technical evolution in mass manipulation. We have dubbed him the Leninoid. He uses the techniques of Lenin without necessarily subscribing to the ideology of Lenin. He's a new type of professional man, the graduate engineer in social demolition, practicing his art in an age of organized revolution. By the hundreds, these Leninoids are crisscrossing America, colonizing in every major city, attacking the very fabric of our constitutional democracy, and spreading an epidemic of false hopes among the nation's youths. These modern Leninoids have inherited from their 19th and 20th century forerunners their whole technology. Their riot-making methods follow a time-tested formula, and the results are as predictable as what happens when the chemist we mentioned earlier drops a block of sodium in water and creates an explosion. There are 3 stages in riot-making. First, the putting together of an organization and the deploying of workers where they can be the most effective. Second, getting the masses of people ready and in the right frame of mind to riot, and third, the riot itself. In the beginning, the professional radicals deploy protest groups into every pyramid of society. Priority targets are organizations which give them access to the mass media, which become outlets for their propaganda. And to recruit new followers, they move into areas where they are most likely to find large groups of discontented people.
It went under many names. At Berkeley, it was known as the Free Speech Movement. On other campuses, it had other labels. But whatever it was called, the purposes were the same: to destroy in the name of improving.
To destroy in the name of improving. What's that remind me of?
To build back better than before.
Remember the terrible damage of COVID as we try to build back from this global pandemic.
Joe Biden calls it Build Back Better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
To do things differently. To build back better.
We're going to build it back better.
And build it back better.
It's my plan to build back better.
Start taking all the problems that have been created in education and mental health and start to build back in a positive way.
It's about building this country back better.
Build back better.
It's a big effort to, some would say, to build back better.
And behind the demonstrations were the skilled organizers of the New Left, carefully staying in the background to give the movement a look of leaderlessness, of spontaneous action. But their methods and objectives were clear.
They recruit their hardcore active members usually on a one-to-one basis. They go knocking on dorm rooms and ask a person to commit themselves to a cause. And that cause usually is phrased in idealistic terms. And the people who go knocking on these doors are armed with facts and figures that the dorm resident usually isn't ready to refute.
Once their organization is formed and the key workers trained and deployed, the Riot Makers are ready for stage 2, the preconditioning of large groups of basically uncommitted persons. When the time is ripe for mass action, these are the people who must be counted on to respond. The goal is to set up hate targets, develop issues, and create a climate of hostility that will draw people together, make them act as a unit, and follow their leaders anywhere when the signal is given. They must be conditioned to accept violence as an instrument of change and convinced of the necessity for direct action. They must give up their individual identities and act with the crowd without questioning the morality of the act. There are many proven ways of accomplishing this.
The whole group identity thing. I made a video about this about 5 years ago called Parting the Poles. I will leave a link to that too below. I suggest you watch it if you haven't.
One way is the in-group, out-group tendency, which motivates most people. It's human nature to want to be in, to become a member of a group. If initially you may not agree with some members of the group, social pressure forces you in anyway. You forget your differences in your desire to be with the rest of the crowd. And suddenly you're not only there on the inside, but you're actively opposing the out-group. This explains, partially at least, the large numbers of students who were drawn into the New Left movements during the 60s. They joined because that seemed to be the place to be, the thing to do, rather than because of any philosophical commitment. And the fact that the whole thing may have been programmed by professional radical organizers didn't change their desire to belong.
Another preconditioning tool is hate targeting, based on the principle that the best way to win an ally is to find a common enemy. We've all seen examples. Hate him because he's white. Hate him because he's black. Hate him because he's the law. Hate the establishment, whether it's the government of the United States, the trustees of a university, or the leaders of industry. The reasons don't have to make sense. The main thing is to focus the hate. And people with nothing else in common are suddenly united. And to keep emotions at a high pitch, the trained propagandist makes skillful use of slogans, again borrowing a page from the Leninist handbook.
An early communist directive on organization of demonstrations stated, "Demonstrations must under no circumstances proceed in silence. Party members are responsible for seeing to it that appropriate slogans are chanted." The same technique is practiced today by the professional shepherds of today's herd of demonstrators, especially the young. The aim is to generate a kind of pep rally hysteria that sweeps away all moderation and reason and reduces a crowd to a state approaching mindlessness. Stage 3, after the organizing and the preconditioning, is the actual incitement to riot, including the staging of the initial violence if necessary. In any mass action of this type, creating the crowd nucleus is of the utmost importance. In this day of instant communication, the initial concentration attracts the all-important television cameramen and news photographers, and these in turn attract more people to the commotion. The result is a snowballing effect, and a crowd many times the size of the original nucleus is formed.
Creating the nucleus is not difficult for a well-developed radical organization. It can be as simple as ordering a dozen or more leaders deployed in various sections of the city to produce a few demonstrators each. This provides enough commotion so that, augmented by the ever-present curious bystanders and the excitement seekers, a respectable demonstration can be held. Sometimes, at a critical moment in community or world affairs, the local radical corps on its own initiative makes the decision to invoke radical tactics. But most of the rioting in American cities in the 1960s started with what has been called the fishing in troubled waters technique, which is what happens when the organization swings into action to take advantage of a spontaneous and unforeseen event. It can be a trivial incident, but in a preconditioned atmosphere and with an organization trained to react instantly to any spark, the way a fire department does, but for the purpose of fanning and fueling, not extinguishing, the resulting explosion can rock a city and start a chain of events that spreads across the entire country. When confrontations do occur, the rioters are armed with a lethal array of weapons, most of them homemade. Giant slingshots in Berkeley, cherry bombs coated with glue and tacks for hurling into police lines, water pistols for shooting ammonia at police horses, lead and steel pipes, blackjacks and chains, aerosol cans of oven cleaner for spraying police, stink bombs, Molotov cocktail bombs, and pipe bombs. And for those who need instructions, they're available. When the police fight back, which they eventually must do when their direct orders are defied or in self-defense, the radicals are ready with their cries of police brutality. This is a standard tactic of the extremist, and the propaganda barrage turns many otherwise clear-thinking citizens against the police, which of course is exactly what the radicals want. And the few demonstrators who are hurt, usually not as seriously as they pretend, become martyrs to the cause. These so-called unprovoked assaults on innocent spectators moved the liberal New York Post columnist Harriet Van Horn to write, "I shall never forget those young bloodied heads. Suddenly the students seemed so young, so vulnerable, and the police so incomprehensibly cruel." While she was writing this about the 1968 riot at Columbia University, Mark Rudd, leader of the action that shut down Columbia, one of the world's greatest centers of learning, had this to say: "This cop violence is good. We're going to get lots of help." Which follows precisely the guerrilla theater scenario written in 1902 by a young Russian radical. "Street demonstrations are the most effective revolutionary weapon," he said, "because they can compel police to use force that cannot help but strike the innocent spectators as well as the radical organizers. The government will continue to win," he wrote, "but a few more victories like these, and the government's fall is inevitable." The young radical who said that is known today by the revolutionary name he later took, Joseph Stalin. While commissions and panels sift the ashes and seek solutions to the violence of the 60s, the real threat, the real catalyst, is still at work. Whether their future shouts are for peace or prosperity, for bread or for justice, when the issue becomes one for the streets, those in charge will not be the idealistic amateurs or the righteous crusaders. They will be the Leninoids, a small corps of trained and dedicated revolutionaries, the Riot Makers. Listen to them and be on guard.
If you want to watch the whole documentary, I will leave a link below in the description. But until then, I'm going to go work on this other video, and hopefully I'll see you guys soon.
I got a motherfucking spaceship. Oh, fuck. Oh, cool. I got it.